Good evening and welcome to the Monday night edition of the People Show. I'm Mark Wallace. Charles Thomas is out for this week. He'll be returning with us next week. We are live on IntellectualRadio.com as well. We are streaming at YouTube and on Facebook Live. Our telephone number here is 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953. And we are going to be doing the week in review. There are a lot of news that we have to get caught up on. We're going to be talking about the domino effect of the falling members of the Trump saga, those who have pled guilty for Trump and some of his top allies. And we're going to be talking about the aldermanic salary increases and see what you think about that. And of course, we have still the ongoing conditions in terms of the migrant situation. And Congress can't seem to get out of their own way. The Republicans can't seem to get out of their own way. We still don't have a Speaker of the House with all of the crises that we have going on in Israel and the crisis that we have going on in Ukraine. And of course, we still have to govern here in the country. And the Republicans still can't seem to choose a Speaker of the House. Never in the history of our government have we ever seen any such thing as this. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about red light camera lawsuits and updates with that. And so we are going to be taking your phone calls at 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953. Coming up on next week's program, we are going to have some of the released without a cause principles from Lindblom and Dunbar. They're going to be our guest on next week's program, so we'll tell you more about that. But look forward to talking with you tonight about any number of these events. Last week, we kicked off or reignited the 10 by 10 to Win campaign to organize the Black vote, to organize and institutionalize and unionize the Black vote. It is my contention, as well as a number of other people, that there is no savior, no one man or one woman that is going to save us or save our community. It must come from the people. And in order for it to come from the people must be properly organized. I'll say it again. The people must be properly organized. We have never institutionalized or unionized our political strength in an organized fashion. And 10 by 10 to Win is what we are doing to organize our political strength. It is more than a notion for us to be told by any faction of politics or political party or persuasion to tell us and that these are the candidates or these are the people that we have to vote from. And the problem with that is, for me, is that these people who have been slated by whatever the political persuasion is that they are people who are in a part of the system. And I believe fundamentally that once people get into the system, they become poisoned by the system. We have all kinds of promises made, all kinds of commitments made prior to someone going in to the system, but it seems that once they get into the system, they are poisoned by that system. What we have to do as voters and as a community of people, what we have to do is we have to organize ourselves by the masses in order for us to be able to determine that we can select and we can elect from amongst our own people that we want to have represent us in representative offices, whether it is an alderman, whether it is a mayor, whether it is a Cook County Board president or a Cook County Board commissioner or a state representative or a state senator or a United States congressman or a governor or a secretary of state. All of these offices are critical to the governing of our communities and setting the opportunities and setting the stages from education to economics for our communities. For more than 3 decades, I've been in the city of Chicago for more than 3 decades, and we still have the same problems. We still have the same problems that we've had 3 decades ago. This will make my 39th year in the city of Chicago. And to see the Black community in Chicago and around Chicago and in some of the other suburbs in the condition that we're in doesn't quite add up when I see that we have elected more Black people to political office, to public office in Chicago, in Cook County, in the state of Illinois, than any other state in the union. So what's missing? What's the problem? Well, the problem is that we have elected people that somebody else has determined, that that these are the candidates that you can select from. We cannot allow for that to continue. We, the people, this is only going to happen through the people. And the people have to organize. Now, this is not to say that we are anti any group. We're not anti any group. We're simply saying that we have got to organize. I heard a speech by Kwame Ture. Some of you know him as Stokely Carmichael, who always talked about organizing, and the people organizing. You've heard me talk about it time and time and time again, that the one thing that we have not done as a Black community of voters is that we have not organized ourselves. We have not institutionalized our political power and our political strength so that we can select and control the people that we want to represent us. And then we can put those people in place and hold those people accountable. In any political system, in particular the one here in the United States of America, you either have to have a lot of money or you have to have a lot of votes. Well, the masses of people, we don't have individually a lot of money, but we do have a lot of votes. Here in Chicago, Cook County, and in the state of Illinois, we have a lot of votes. We control a lot of power that we will be able to demonstrate, but we have never organized it in the way that we are talking about doing it as the people now. We've had 2 meetings, 2 great meetings. Each meeting, we get more and more participants. We had people from the west side, people from the south side, people from the suburbs, and that is exactly what we need to do. We have got to amass ourselves together. We have got to get away from this split of fighting each other. We are not each other's enemy. We are each other's support. We can't look at our individual situations, our individual success, and suggest that we have made progress, because my success is tied to and inextricably tied to the struggle of people who came before me. I'm not ignorant to the fact that the success that I have been able to experience is not my success on my own. There are people who struggled, there are people who died, there are people who bled and made sacrifices in order for me to have their opportunities. So I have the responsibility with my success to use that success for the benefit of lifting our people. And you have the same responsibility. If you're a successful person, you are not successful on your own. There are people who died and bled for you to have the opportunity to now experience the kind of success that you have. So we are absolutely responsible for doing this. And the only liberation that we're going to have is when we bring ourselves together, unionize ourselves, strengthen ourselves together, and don't allow for ourselves to cannibalize ourselves, and certainly don't allow for somebody from the existential to pick us off and divide us and fractionize us, because that works for the benefit of those people who are in power. It does not work for us. We are going to continue to organize. We're going to organize in every area of the city, every area of the county where we live, that we are under one umbrella. All of these organizations, there are more than, I did some research. I don't know the exact number, but there are more than 1,000 Black organizations, and it may be far more than that, organizations that are working on behalf of issues that impact the Black community, from healthcare to housing to mass incarceration, mental health, jobs, you name it, from education to economics. But the problem is that we are not organized as a body. We are not organized as a body. That is the one fundamental thing that we have not done. And we cannot make progress if we are not properly organized. So we're going to be talking about that throughout the night. I got a guest coming in a little bit later on, Martin G. Johnson, the crime chaser. You all know him, that he and I have been working together on this, and we're going to continue to connect with other organizations and other Black people all around Chicago, Cook County, and the state of Illinois. We have got to do this if we're going to liberate ourselves here in Chicago, and if we are going to make sure that we have the equity and the fair opportunities that we should have. Do you know that 50% of the public commons in Chicago, 50%, more than 50%, are privatized? So that means that capitalism is taking over our government. Our public commons that you and I pay taxes to, more than 50% of that has been privatized to private companies for profit. And history shows that when we privatize our public commons, they tend to fail. They're trying to privatize our public schools. They want to privatize our streets and sanitation. They want to even privatize our park districts. We cannot allow for the people's dollars to be privatized for the enrichment of a preferential few, where they get the largesse and our people get the crumbs, if they get that. We don't have a single poor white community in Chicago, and we shouldn't have. Likewise, we shouldn't have poor Black communities in Chicago. But that is on us. That's not going to happen. Brandon Johnson is not going to be our savior. Governor Pritzker is not going to be our savior. Juliana Stratton is not going to be our savior. I don't care who you name, they are not going to be our savior. No one man or one woman is going to be the liberator of our people. It has to happen by the masses of an organized people. And that means that you and I have to get ourselves reconnected, organize ourselves together, do away with these petty splits and fights that they have us fighting each other while they're running off with the largest $40 billion coming to the state of Illinois through the Infrastructure Act and the Chips and Science Act. Billions of dollars are going to be coming through the state of Illinois, and we need to make sure that billions of dollars are invested in our communities around the South and West Side, around the suburbs and where we live, to refortify our communities. You and I have got to make sure that that happen. And we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to take your phone calls at 708-223-8953. I want to get your thoughts about it. But more than anything, we've got to get involved. We've got to get busy. We can't just do a lot of talking and that there's no organized activity behind that talking. This work that we do to provide information, we're going to talk about that information, give you statistics, and then we're going to organize ourselves to strategize so that our communities will be respected, because our communities are not being respected. There's no way that we can suggest that our communities are being respected. Now, let me just say this. We can get distracted. We can get distracted, and we can make this whole migrant situation and get honed in on this migrant situation and take our eyes off the big picture. Because as I said last week, it was not a migrant that closed 50 schools. It was not a migrant that shut down the mental health facilities. That happened by people who were American citizens elected to public office that proposed it, and a city council voted 50-0 to close the mental health institutions in Chicago. So that means every alderman, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, all voted in favor of shutting down our public commons, not migrants. So our focus, whatever your position is about the migrant, and I understand it. I understand that our public commons, again, are being stripped away from everyday taxpayers, people who pay into a system to use those public commons, and they're being utilized for other purposes. I get it. But don't be distracted from the bigger picture, because that situation eventually is going to be handled. It is going to be dealt with. But we've got to organize so that we can deal with all of these areas of importance so that our communities can thrive and prosper, that anybody who is in our communities that wants a job can get a job and get a good paying job. Manufacturing is on the rise. More than 800,000 jobs have been let in manufacturing, $280 billion in development, a $2 billion plant happening down in Kankakee, 2,000 jobs at a battery plant being built down there. We need to see that on the south side of Chicago and on the west side of Chicago. We need to see that out in areas like Robbins, Harvey, Markham, Phoenix, all of these communities that have been hit hard, Englewood. That's not going to happen by any one person in political office. They don't have the vision, and they're being controlled by other people because we did not select them, and we only voted for them to elect them for them to advocate for somebody else's agenda. This, you and I, we have to stop allowing for that to happen. We have to stop participating in that way. So We're organizing, we're continuing to organize, and we have to organize on a mass basis. We have to build that 1 million voter voting block that encompasses all of the organizations that are doing work individually in our communities. That is on us. That is you and that is me. We have to do that. Otherwise, this system is going to eat us alive. Where you now have more wealth controlled by fewer people in this country, and that is growing. And it ought not to be. Because these CEOs that are earning 400 and 500 times the average earning working person today, back in the 60s, back in the 70s, when the average CEO only earned 30 times that of the average working person. The economic disparities in this country are worse than it is anywhere else in the developed world. Anywhere else in the developed world is right here in these United States of America, right here in Chicago. And they want to get angry because the mayor proposes for wealthy people to pay their fair share or to pay a little bit on the billions of transactions that they do here that could generate hundreds of millions of dollars for our government, that we pay for the roads that they drive on to get back and forth. We pay for the infrastructure that they use to make their trades, and they pay nothing. And then the governor says that he will veto it if it came to his desk. No governor, no public official should be able to threaten the public when the public is calling for something without paying a price. But again, I say it's not enough to just have conversation, not enough to just to get angry, not enough to get out and just make a bunch of noise and not make anything happen. We have the information, but the one fundamental thing that we have not done is we have not organized. We have a bunch of organizations, but we are not organized as a people. We've got to get organized as a people. We've got to become our own political union. I always use the example of the Chicago Teachers Union, which I'm a fan of Stacey Davis Gates. I'm a fan of Tara Stamps, Commissioner Tara Stamps, I should say. I'm a fan of Mayor Johnson. I hope that he's successful, and I hope that he's able to pull a plan together to deal with the crises that we have happening. But these are not crises that he created. These are crises that other people are politically and illegally creating and putting on places like Chicago to make political statements. Let's make sure that we understand what is happening. We've got to make sure that we understand what is happening. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be taking your phone calls on that. But just think about what we could do when we organize and if we organize. We can do nothing if we don't organize, except for continuing to come back and have these conversations over and over and over again, to have some incremental progress of a few people doing well, maybe getting some contracts. But individual success has a responsibility to use that success for the benefit of lifting its people. We have to make everybody successful. Everybody doesn't want to be rich. Everybody's not looking to own a business, but everybody has a right. Everybody has a right to a good paying job. And there is more wealth in this city, in this state, and in this country. It makes no sense that we have a country and we can't feed people, and we have homeless people, and we have hungry people in the richest nation in the world. That makes no sense. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to organize about it. All right, listen, when we come back from the break, we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back. I'm going to have my guest, Martin G. Johnson, is going to be joining me at the table. And we are going to chop it up. We're going to talk about some things that he is doing. And we're going to talk a little bit about his history, how he got started. And he's doing some great work out there in the community. And we are going to talk about it, find out a little bit about his history. When we come back from the break, we'll be taking your phone calls at 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the program. This is Mark Wallace, your host here on The People Show every Monday night from 7 o'clock until 9. Joining me in the studio is my good friend and comrade, Martin G. Johnson. Welcome to the program, Martin. Thank you for joining.
Thank you guys for inviting me. I've been here before. Earl know that, but just thank you. Not on the Mark Wallace Show, though.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, it's good that for you to join me. Charles is out, and good that you were able to sit in with me tonight. We're going to be talking about some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that you're doing.
Right.
But before we do that, why don't you give us an update or at least some background on how did you get started doing what you're doing now, the crime chaser?
Well, I started with this organization. It's called Chicago Against Violence, and we were just a grassroots organization. At that time, we really wasn't. It wasn't no Facebook Live at that time. We just do a video, take a still picture in the community. Basically, we started in the area of Woodlawn, the third district. So we did a lot of work with the CAPS, and so that's how I got started. So we had kind of like got stagnant a little bit. So I started noticing the young people doing protests. And I said, well, you know what? Let me go on out there and just follow some young people. Didn't know nobody. So I was basically following the young people. And then when I got around the young people, I seen one of them go live. I was like, man, how do you do that? So they taught me how to do it. And I just started doing the crime, just call myself the crime chaser, It just, my purpose was, it wasn't cloud chasing. I would have never thought that I would grow to where I'm at now. It was just bring awareness, because we've been told that the reason why we have crime in our community is because we don't call the police. We have no snitching, and that's not true. 911, we call 911. Those are signs that we call in the black. Now, we're not going to get them. Now, we'll call the police and say, hey, there's a person shot in front of my house, and hang up. But we're not going to do the police job. And we know in our community, in the black community, snitches get stitches. I hate to say it, but it's just true. And just say if I witness a crime in the community, Brother Mark, and I tell what I witnessed, and okay, they can move me, but what about my family? So you have to worry about retaliation. So that's one of the things that I wanted to show the world. This is how we live in. This is normal. This is normal in our community. It's not normal in probably affluent communities, but in these, I call them high crime areas. That's the way we live. We see and we don't see.
Abnormality has become a norm in some of our areas.
Yes.
So you started how long ago?
Man, it had to be a good 6-7 years, about 7 years. I go back, man. Before they was doing Facebook Live. Actually, I was going live before the news.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I was reporting crime on Facebook Live before the news.
So how is it that you find out where these, crime scenes are happening? When that?
Well, it's that window is closing now, but at first, a scanner. We had a scanner. And I don't call it police, it was a regular scanner. And that's when the channels was open to the public. You can listen. That's how I was finding out about the crimes. But now everything is encrypted now. So they do have an app where you can listen 20 minutes later. But I don't too much care for that. But how I do it is sometimes I just ride.
Is that the Citizens app?
Yeah. Well, no, I was before the Citizen app. That was my idea, actually.
Right.
But the Citizen app don't get it either, unless somebody see a crime right there and they just upload it on the Citizen app. So I get called word of mouth now. Sometimes I just ride, and it just happened.
Well,
you have called me.
Yeah. Well, if I see things, you and I met,
right?
And for informational basis for people to think, Martin and I have not known each other a long time. We really met each other throughout the campaign, right? You would see me on the campaign. I would see you, and you would come over, and we engaged and been having conversation, and then we connected, and I told you about the whole 10 by 10. Of course, you already knew about it.
I knew about it, yeah.
And so I wanted to get that reignited, and you and I just decided, hey,
because
let's work together on it.
During the campaign, not changing the subject.
Yeah.
And I was like, where's the 10 by 10 at?
Mm-hmm.
Then I was at that church where I heard a pastor say, you got 10 people, you grab 10 people. I was there that day.
Mm-hmm.
I was there. I heard, I was like, man, is that, is that the 10 by 10? That's what I didn't know. I wasn't a member of 10 by 10 at first. Mm-hmm. So I listened to it many times over the radio. I'm not really a political person, Mark. I'm just not coming aboard learning about political things. So I'm basically a baby in the political world.
Well, I always contend that we are all political, whether we are conscious or not, or unconscious. Some of us are a little more conscious than others, but we're all a part of that process, and all are equally important into that process.
Yes.
I don't believe that there's anybody who was not important to that process, all the way from the youngest to the oldest. We're all important to the liberation of our people, and I believe that we come together, we cross paths with each other, and what you are doing is at the height of being political, whether you intended it to be that way or not, but it is, because it is one of those things that is critical in our community. And unfortunately, that it's always highlighted as being the majority of what's happening, even though it's not the majority of what's going on in our community.
Let me say this,
serious.
Let me say this. I've slowed down reporting crime like that. And I had a dear friend of mine, he said, well, Martin, you got to give us things to prevent crime. Tell us how to avoid crime. Show other things as well. When we want to see crime, it gets a lot of views.
Right.
But he said, you have to switch it up. You have to show people dancing, having a good time, people doing great things, graduations and all different things. So that's what I start shifting, shifting like Chicago.
Progress.
Right. It's not all about crime.
Right.
It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful place. You just have to be careful where you're going, with the company you keep and all that. So that's why I do what I do. And it was perfect to hook up with you with your 10 by 10. It's another level. It's showing, hey, I'm not just showing crime. I'm showing something that it would benefit the Black people that we live around and we serve.
And we're participating together. It is really the essential of what it is that we have to do, right? In order for us to make our communities, as Brandon using his tagline, stronger, safer communities for all. And while I always say that when somebody can focus on something negative happen, there are millions of good things that are happening that we don't know about. It will never make the news because it doesn't get the attention that blood and guts gets, in terms of that sort of thing. However, it is important, and I think that it's an important work that you're doing that's highlighting this sort of thing, and highlighting it can bring attention to those who have the resources to help to do something for prevention.
Yes.
Because I believe that the greatest crime prevention is a job.
Yes.
Economic stability.
Yes.
Right. Because wherever you have high rates of unemployment and high rates of poverty, you're going to have high rates of violence and high rates of what I call high risk activity.
Yes.
So it's not enough for us, and I don't want people to misunderstand like you're glorifying these negatives. You're really highlighting a problem that exists in our community, and the question becomes, what are we going to do about it?
Let me say this, Brother Mark, and I think that I brought the attention that's really needed to Chicago with the crime, because as I said earlier, people think we don't call we call the police. We don't want to live in these conditions. We don't want to live. We all right now, those of us that's listening over the radio know that we know someone that's been killed by gunshot violence. We all know. And probably not the person not caught. We see it all the time. It's the norm. It's trauma. It's just trauma. And I this is what I preach to. This is what I preach. I'm going to use the word preach. I tell young ladies, if you're dealing with a guy that's a gunslinger, that's a known gang member, always get into confrontation, you shouldn't be in public with that person because he's a threat to you. And what I mean by that, if you're driving in a car with him and they see him in a car, they're not going to tell you to duck while they get your significant other. They're not going to do it. They're going to spray the whole car. And Mark, this is the story. The young man, he got grazed, and the woman got shot and killed and paralyzed. Just like on Expressway on Bishop Ford. 2 people riding in the car. They shot up the car. The woman got paralyzed, 8-month-old woman pregnant. And the boyfriend, he got grazed. So this is what I tell them. Do not sit and park cars in high crime areas. You are a sitting duck. Those are things that prevention I give you, Don't walk down the street with your headphones on, not paying attention, just shaking your head, bobbing. People are watching when you think they're not watching. So we have predators out. We have people out here right now, Mark. There's somebody's right now that have a gun ready to use it. All they need is one negative reaction so they can justify in their mind why they shot you. One negative, whether you drive and cut them off, you mean mugged them, or you said something on social media. That's all they need. That's all they need. And it's so easy to do it.
Well, these tensions, they come from somewhere, and they
Yes.
come from something.
Yes.
And I think that, the underlying causes of those things is what that we are advocating for that we have to deal with. And we have to deal with that. We have to deal with the mass incarceration
Yes.
of Black men that are more than 1.2 million Black men that has been put in prison since 1980. 1980, there were only 140,000 Black men in the entire United States of America that was incarcerated. Ronald Reagan and the war on drugs that was initiated by Richard Nixon.
You mean the war on Black people?
The war on Black people.
Okay.
That's really what it means.
Right.
Everybody who was running for a public office, that was their tag.
Mhm.
That was the tag that they used
Tough on crime.
to be tough on crime, which means to be tough on Black men.
Yeah.
And we went from 180,000 to 660,000 Black men in prison in a 5-year period because of one so-called war on crime, and it was really a war on Black men. And then we go fast forward to the crime bill of the 1990s, when just about everybody in Congress voted in favor of that bill, with the exception of about 8 U.S. Congress people that voted in favor of that bill, which had this mandatory sentencing that you could get 30 years to life for one rock cocaine, and somebody else can have 5 grams of cocaine and get probation. And we know who that group is.
We know.
Right? So, and here it is that we're 13% of the population, but we make up more than 80% of the incarceration. That sort of thing is, we have to deal with. But we have to deal with the socioeconomic injustices, right, that persist.
Tell us about the unemployment rate. What's here in Illinois?
Here in Chicago, currently, we have between 18 and 25-year-old Black males are unemployed at 47%. To their white male counterpart at 7% in Chicago. Now, somebody please explain to me, how do you expect to have true public safety when you have that kind of economic carnage that persists in our communities?
Let me say this too, Mark, what's on my mind. We have the narrative that Black people are lazy. We don't want to work. I hear that so much, and I can't stand it. I said, well, you can't be talking about me. I work. I'm a hard worker. Go to work. Now you talking about one of these little petty jobs that we need. You're talking about a livable wage. They want to work something you can take care of family. Now, that myth, we ought to destroy that, because they just think we just out here. We don't want to work. We're looking for something free. We're looking for something to steal or something, or hand out or something. That's a stereotype. And I hate that stereotype about us.
Well, anybody who goes around and purports that lie is some